This is the 2013 Blackberry Q10. It's both a forgotten relic of the past and a window into what the future of smartphones should look like, with incredible repairability. As a phone company, Blackberry lies dead in the water as they moved on to security and software development when their smartphone division began to dry up in the run-up to 2016. I'm not here to talk about the history of the brand though. Today I'm showing you what makes this Blackberry Q10 so remarkable, and I'm going to modify mine so I can use it every single day. Released in 2013, the Blackberry Q10 has an AMOLED screen. Mainstream phones didn't even get OLED until just before 2020 really, so having AMOLED so early on is kind of odd. It looks and feels stunning to use though, since OLED screens can reproduce total blacks as well as vibrant colours. There's a physical keyboard on the phone which takes us back to those peak Blackberry days, although there's no scroll wheel or other buttons on the front of the phone. This is integrated into the OS in several ways. Typing is of course done using the keyboard, which is amazing. It's so tactile. You can also unlock the device, scroll around pages, and set shortcuts using the backlit keys, which can be useful at times. The Q10 charges using micro USB, but also has a headphone jack and a mini HDMI connector for displaying things on a bigger screen. That's not something we see or need at all these days, but fair enough. The phone has 2GB of RAM and 16GB of system storage, which is expandable using an SD card. The chipset on board is a Snapdragon S4. These parts are very of their time and obviously don't compare to newer smartphones in the slightest. I'm not fascinated with this machine because of its speed though. In fact, possibly the best thing about the Q10 is the experience you get taking it apart. I've decided that because of the beautiful AMOLED display, I'll be using this thing as a bedside clock for a while. I find the keyboard backlight pretty annoying though, so I'm going to open this thing up and disconnect the keyboard from the motherboard because it's really that easy. It's not going to take long at all, but if phone repair isn't your cup of tea, here's some toys you can play with if you're bored, alright? First, let's lose the back panel, which just slides off. There's small contacts for the NFC antenna on the back, which I think are neat. You can see the removable battery at this point too. Great for giving this thing a longer life if battery replacement is something that's needed. Next, let's get rid of these T4 Torx screws so I can slide off this little camera cover module. How cool is that? The flash is in there as well as some of the antenna bands, I believe. These other screws are all T5 Torxes, which come out pretty easily, as you can see. Almost time to take off the plastic motherboard cover, but there's two more hidden screws. Who would have guessed they were under this little border at the bottom of the keyboard? It's attached with clips, by the way, so easily put back on afterwards. Once all the screws are removed, I can get to the motherboard underneath this cover, and it's amazing. It's like opening up a miniature laptop, or even an iPod from 2005 or something. The display, keyboard, camera, flash, and more each have connectors that can just be unplugged so you can perform an easy replacement on those parts. The headphone jack is just attached to the frame with two screws so that once the connector is unplugged, you can remove it without any hassle. Apple have picked up criticism over the last few years for making iPhones and MacBooks near impossible for the average Joe to open up and repair, and they've actually fought hard against third-party repair shops recently by coding the parts to a device itself. You don't need me to tell you that's a fat middle finger to the environment and to all those landfills old devices get shipped off to if they don't get repaired. Replacing the screen is something that can be done with relative ease on this Blackberry Q10, along with almost all of the other parts inside. A significant percentage of phones that aren't ancient just get thrown away because a part breaks, and it's too expensive to go to a repair shop, so the owner just buys a new phone. Let's turn our attention back to getting the bedside clock function of my Q10 though. The keyboard backlight was detracting from the plain clock face I wanted by my bed, so I've unplugged the keyboard and just put a small piece of paper under the connector so that it doesn't make any contact unintentionally. Time to put the device back together. Footage of which has been sped up greatly by the powers of editing which befall me. Sliding that camera cover on is still so exciting to me. Right, now it's back together, we can power on the device, and it works perfectly, just minus the keyboard, which is fine for my use case. I'll go into the default clock app, which is what I'm using for alarms and this bedside clock mode, and there we have it. All I can see in the dark is the clock face, which is exactly what I was hoping for. I'm actually going to attach this to my wall using some of those Velcro type strips you can get for putting pictures and things up on walls. I won't be doing that today, but keep an eye out for it in the background of future videos, eh? Looking at other uses for this Blackberry Q10, it's fair to say there just aren't very many. The phone's OS is Blackberry 10, which was loosely based off Android, I believe, but hasn't received an update for going on a decade. Support for BlackBerry services like BBM, the BlackBerry App Store and others dropped off slowly until 2022 when the servers closed entirely for all of those things. It's incredibly rare to see a phone with a physical keyboard these days, as we've all adopted full-screen devices like the modern iPhones and Pixels of this decade. If you think about it, there's a big appeal to those writing a lot of emails and messages on the go, but not many people would choose tactile keys over more screen space these days. Something almost everyone in their right mind would pick, though, is the repairability of this Blackberry Q10. Seriously, imagine having spare batteries for your phone so that you could just swap them out when you needed to on the go. The Q10 is old enough to be past its usable life. Its software support was very patchy, so it didn't enjoy anywhere near the same lifespan as the iPhone 5S, which was also released in 2013. It's still built with the same parts as a modern smartphone though. Touchscreen AMOLED display, rechargeable battery, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth and mobile network antennas, video and photo camera, all this and more squeezed into a small slab of plastic, glass and metal. We've had a couple of recent rulings from the EU regulate the way phones have to be built these days, partly in an effort to stop e-waste and monopolization. With the new removable battery law coming into place in a couple of years' time, perhaps we'll see a slight shift in how phones are made in the coming years. I'd personally love to see some more like this. This is my second ever video on a phone really. It's not something that I'm usually that interested in, but I thought this was worth making a video about. I only started looking into the Q10 because I broke my phone recently and I'm going to go through all the old phones I can use until I can get a new one sorted. Thank you very much for watching. Subscribe for more similar videos and I'll see you the same time next week.